We appreciate you keeping it tuned in to the Sports Cubicle. It's Dan Marver. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado here on WCPT 820 AM. You can check out the video version of the show over at Mercado Airwaves Network on YouTube.com. Make sure you're subscribing to us there and wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Mercado Airwaves Network. And of course, WCPT 820's podcast if you've missed the show on Sunday nights. And by the time you are listening to this on Sunday night on WCPT, the Bulls would have played the Cleveland Cavaliers and will now be 8 games away from hitting the playoffs, hopefully. And here to kind of break a little bit of recent Bulls development when it comes to the injury front, not just what's happening on the court. It's Dan Marver and myself, Mike Mercado. I wanted to hit on this. So Lonzo Ball has been out since January 14th because of a knee injury. Not only did he undergo surgery for a torn meniscus, but he's also dealing with a bone bruise that continues to cause him trouble when he tries to run. Because of the discomfort in the knee, the Bulls recently shut down Ball for running for 10 days and will have him focus on strength training during this stretch in hopes of him being able to finally take the next step in his rehab and ramp up for a return. Now, these are some interesting notes I want you to keep in mind when you're hearing this conversation. He's the team's best passer who can control the tempo and ignite fast break opportunities with his hit ahead passes. He's one of the few volume 3-point shooters on the team, hitting 42.3% of his 3-point attempts on 7.4 attempts per game. The havoc he wreaked on defense was a pillar of the Bulls' early season success, and he also helps on the glass. Chicago, at this point of this article that we got from yahoo.com, Chicago is 15-17 since Ball went down. A good chunk of the games also featured Alex Caruso sitting out and Bulls defensive creator of both of them sidelined, including Patrick Williams. And we have now seen Patrick Williams and Alex Caruso come back, and the defense has still struggled. DeMar DeRozan was out, and they are now losing to what we call the bum teams in the NBA. Marver, your thoughts on what is still a playoff team starting to look like they have completely run out of gas?
Well, the schedule hasn't done them any favors. I mean, they only had that one home game against the Raptors after the West Coast, and then started another road trip that they're in the middle of now. Bucks, Pelicans, followed by Cavaliers and Knicks, and then even the Wizards. So, I mean, they're not doing anything. They play better at home for whatever reason. But the Ball, I mean, I don't think we can count on Ball to be a major contributor this year. I mean, unfortunately, and Williams is back, but I don't think he's at full strength. Honestly, and Levine is has an injury issue too. So I think they'll make the playoffs, but they may be in the play-in tournament the way things look to me, because they're slipping. They've lost the opportunity, it looks like, to be a host of the top 4. Playing 5, 6, 7, and 8. They're going to be in that 5, 6, 7, and 8 mix, it looks like, because I don't think they're going to drop all the way to 11. I think that's very unlikely. They'd have to, I think Washington is 11 now, so they really have to drop quite a bit. But it looks like they're going to have a tough stretch, and then they have a whole bunch of home games to finish the season. So hopefully they will pick up some steam with that, right at the end, because for whatever reason, the United Center isn't available right now. It seems like there's some college kids playing there, so they're not able to use the building right now. But be that as it may, this road trip is going to be challenging, like every road trip is for them, and I expect them to continue to suffer, to struggle on the road. But they don't seem to have the same winning chemistry or formula that they had early on. And maybe it's Ball, but I think it's a number of other factors. I think the whole chemistry has been disrupted for some reason with injuries and changing personnel. I mean, they did make a couple of moves, but Thompson was the only one that was any consequence. So it looks to me as though they're going to make the playoffs, like I said, but possibly be in that silly play-in tournament.
Well, I mean, it might be a saving grace, that play-in tournament, because the way this team has been playing, they might, on certain areas of basketball, completely miss the top 8. And you bring up some really interesting points. And I think what's most upsetting for Bulls fans, or concerning for Bulls fans, was always the thought that you can have the saving grace of they haven't been healthy all season. But we've been talking about here on the Sports Cubicle, no team has really been healthy this season. Like every team, whether it's a matchup against the Miami Heat, whether it's a matchup against Golden State, whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's Brooklyn, that's now going to be able to get Kyrie back. Like no team has ever been at full strength the entire season. And I think that's what's concerning for Bulls fans is now that they feel they're getting guys back, it's just not going to be enough ammunition. And I want to know your thoughts on this marvelous one is how do you think the Bulls got to this point? It obviously shows how much DeMar's MVP candidate type of play he had before the All-Star game really carried this team and just got rid of a lot of its flaws or disguised them. But we see that you still need a superstar to win in this league. And while I think that DeMar and Nikola and Zach and these guys are really, really good NBA players, they're not playing like Devin Booker. They're not playing like Giannis. They're not playing like Embiid. They're not playing at like a Kevin Durant type of level. So what is it? Is that what the Bulls are missing? Is that always going to be the key for this Bulls generation for championship number 7 for them to get to that goal? It's just they don't have that dude.
That could be. Oops. So that could be. I mean, I think that it looked like DeRozan was the guy. They have the three you mentioned, DeMar and Zach and Vukovic. But I mean, the guard play hasn't been that bad either. So I think that I think the free agent, you may be right. They may need another big name. I mean, you get into the playoffs and you could face in a playing game a team like Atlanta. Trae Young can go off for 43 points. It can be like Curry almost on a given night. So a guy like that would be very helpful. Somebody that can shoot from long range a little bit to open things up, because that's one aspect they don't seem to have. A lot of the teams that have been successful do have that threat to pull the defense out with a long-range shooter, and they don't seem to have that with this group. But the front line is solid, and once they get all the guards back, they could actually, do some damage in the playoffs. I never said they're going to win the championship, because I don't think they could win a series, honestly, against the Milwaukee or even, necessarily a Brooklyn or the Boston, those teams. But I'd like to see them make a run still. But I'm starting to have my doubts with the way things have been going, particularly on the road.
And it's something you got to do, right? You got to win 2 games on the road. You got to do something on the road when it comes to, at some point, to win an NBA Finals, you got to win a road game. And this team is going to have a hard time moving forward because you're going to have to invest money in Zach LaVine. You're paying DeMar. And what's also a little frustrating actually on the court right now is you see Vooch gets kind of shrinks. He disappears. And I don't think it's him. I think he's had a bounce back second half. I think the offense just kind of goes away from him. And there are points where you could have the game slow down. You can start dictating the pace of the game when you feed him the ball. And I feel like the team loses that a lot. And I think right now I'm really interested to see what Billy Donovan does as a coach. I think he's a hell of a coach. But you look around the NBA, especially somebody like, let's say, an Eric Spoelstra, where we all thought of him as the kid little brother of Pat Riley. And now he's got the respect of NBA greats because he's able to get a team like that in the NBA Finals in the bubble by just having a great defensive mindset and a culture. Billy Donovan's built a culture. They brought in veterans to bring in that culture. Can you steal a series from somebody? Can you get us to next year? And what are you going to do if you're Arturas Konashovas and Mark Eversley? If you're this front office? Now, Marver, if we're looking into the future a little bit, I think the Bulls are going to be very, very active when it comes to trying to find that next star. My question to you is this. This is where this level of Bulls team is. They're going to play in the playoffs, I think, one way or the other, whether it's the play-in or it's an actual series. But do you think Zach LaVine will be on the team that we consider true NBA title contenders?
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, you're talking about maybe as trade bait?
Perhaps.
It's a possibility. You'd have to get somebody pretty good for him, I would think, though. And perhaps that will be a way they go, in order to retool a little bit. They do have some other pieces that they can move, but I don't have a list in front of me of the free agents, coming up before 22, 23. And that would be an interesting way to go where they wouldn't have to really lose anybody. So I think if we study that, I believe that would be a better way to go than to move Zach, honestly, because they seem to have a good thing going with DeRozan and Zach together. Yeah, I'd like to keep that and maybe, like I say, get another scorer, particularly a long range scorer. I think that would really be helpful to bring the defense out a little bit, because they're not much of a threat from outside right now, it looks like to me.
I love that you bring that up, because we love Zach's game here on the Sports Cubicle. It's something that we've always thought that he's definitely at the very least a max player. The question is, what are you doing for the future? This team seems to try to be in win now mode. And I think when Zach LaVine is healthy, he's one of the best players in the NBA when it comes to pure offense. The thing is, if you're going to move on from Zach, you're going to need an upgrade. And there's not many guys ahead of Zach that aren't complete superstars, the top of the NBA. So it would be hard for them to move. So I'm with you. I think they're going to have to try to bring somebody in. And I wonder how much Vooch as an expiring contract as the years go on. Maybe that's the candidate. And I think this front office has enough, foresight, or at least they have enough chutzpah. They have enough guts that they're willing to risk it. They're willing to trade away. They got the guy that they traded a lot for. And I'm not advocating for all this. We're not talking, this team has gone beyond expectations. They've made new expectations. We're talking about the future, because it just seems like this locomotive is just running out of steam. But I think the Bulls, and Marver, you and I have talked about this plenty of times. I feel like at the very least, they're in a good position. Even if this doesn't end well, even if this ends in a play-in, even if this ends in a first round, they have put themselves in a great position moving forward.
I agree. The thing is that I now have kind of taken a look at the free agents, and there are going to be some really high-powered free agents. An interesting one to me is actually somebody that could come home, so to speak, out of Dallas, Jalen Brunson. He's a free agent, it looks like, from this list here that I'm looking at. And there's some really high-powered free agents that may be available. I don't know if I'd want them at this point. Bradley Beal, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Russell Westbrook could be free agents. But I think that might be a little too expensive. So, I mean, even a Blake Griffin at the end of his career would be a tough rebounder to have. So I'm looking at some of these guys that they might be able to get as free agents. And I think a lot of them would be interested in coming to a team that's on the cusp of being a real contender. So that's the way I would go. I'm just, like I say, I hadn't really looked at the list, and I'm looking at it right now. And there's a lot of good possibilities for adding to the mix.
And that is what's so fun, is that the Bulls are going to be in the middle of all of it. And before we head out, I want everybody to keep an eye on Boston and Jason Tatum. That team is on fire right now. And wherever they end up in the standings, it's going to hurt a bunch of teams. So we'll see how the Bulls become affected by that, because they are destroying and ragtagging teams. So it should be really fun. But this is what's a lot of fun about this Bulls team, is that they're good, they're entertaining, and even when they're struggling, we know they have it in them. We just want to see if they could get to the playoffs. Give us a series. Give us a home playoff series. Let us watch some playoff basketball at the United Center. That means something. And the offseason will be a lot of fun. We want to know your thoughts. Let us know, how have you been feeling about the Chicago Bulls, the upcoming schedule? Lightens up just a little bit, but you go right back to Murderers Row to end the season. So we want to know your thoughts. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. It's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado.